there is a deep seating passion in me, but there's also a gentleness. And my entire life has been a battle in trying to not be gentle, because you're living in a world which does not respect gentleness.
What if your biggest passion could also be your life's purpose? On the Life Explored podcast, we're uncovering the hidden connections between faith and everyday life, getting to know people and their passions. My name is Wes, and I will be your host on this journey. Each episode, we will have an interesting guest to give us a fresh perspective on life and faith through their own experiences. Join us on this journey as we explore life together. Hello, and welcome to the pilot episode of our podcast. Hosted here at New Life Church, and that is Life Explored. So for this pilot episode, I am joined by Andrew Scotland, who's our pastor here. So welcome, Andrew. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for having me, Wes. So our agenda really is going to be talking about is people and passion. That's like the themes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Andrew. We're going to talk about the person first, the background, Andrew's background, and then we'll launch into what Andrew's passion is. So first of all, Andrew, how about you tell us a little about who you are and what it is you do at the moment?
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go, Wes?
If you cover sort of just kind of where we are now, yeah. And then we'll dive into. I'll ask you. I've got some questions lined up. We'll ask about your background.
So my name's Andrew Scotland. For those of you that don't know, I'm the pastor here at New Life Church Rugby. We've been pastoring this church since 2008, I believe. Co-pastor with other elders, Ewan Robertson, Alan Scotland, and Yashawn Smith. And as a church, we are a charismatic church. That believe in the gifts of the Spirit, but we are also evangelical. And our roots come from the British House Church movement at the time of the charismatic renewal in this country in the 60s and the 70s. We belong to that stream of thought and stuff. So we're based here in Rugby. I'm married to Hannah. We have 4 beautiful children who are no longer children. They're all adults. The youngest is about 17 years of age. So we're at the phase now where we're starting to rediscover what it's like to go on dates again. Yeah. But also the fact that the children have got their own lives to live as well, and it gives that bit more experience to have some time together, but enjoy serving in the church as well.
Great. And how long have you been like a pastor, or been in that role as a pastor?
Yeah. So in 2008, I was set into eldership. Mm-hmm. And it kind of was full-time ministry that I went into at that period of time. We originally came to Rugby in 2002, and since 2002 we were involved in many different areas of ministry within the church: house group leadership, youth leadership, children's work, stewarding, whatever needed to be done, because the church was very much in a pioneering phase. And so you had to put your hands at many different tasks. And often people say that most pastors who are in that position become, a jack of all trades, but a master of none.
Sure. Good stuff. So yeah, I think with that we'll just launch into your background really. Mm-hmm. So the first question I have then, right, is if you were to create a signature ice cream flavor that represents your personality, what would it be called and what would it be made of?
Okay. So there's kind of like a running joke when we've gone on holiday. Often when we were younger, Hannah and I, if we went abroad, we went to Spain. And so I learned to ask for the specific ice cream all the time. It was coco helado, por favor, señor. In other words, it was coconut ice cream. So I would have to say coconut. And what I like about coconut is it's not overpowering. It's subtle, but it has some body to it, a kick afterwards, And so if I was to liken my life to that, there is a deep seating passion in me, but there's also a gentleness. And my entire life has been a battle in trying to not be gentle, because you're living in a world which does not respect gentleness. And so I felt that I had to fit in with this ungentlemanly kind of behavior that you see in life example to you. So that would be my flavor of ice cream, was the desire to be subtle, but
hard shell, but sort of a mild, or
yes,
I don't know, fruity, flavorful inner.
I love coconut.
Right, my next question then. If your early life was turned into a movie, what would the title be, and who would play you?
Okay. I don't know who. Well, I mean, I don't know who would play me, really, to be honest. But the title. This is a really good question. I would say it would be running to God. And the reason why I would say that was because quite a lot of my life, or my younger years, was running away. But that sense of having that prodigal son experience to running back, and embracing him, or being embraced by him, and then running with him. So I often think of life in running metaphors, because I used to do a lot of cross-country running when I was younger, and I was quite good at it. You have your highs and lows in running. The times when you come to that sense where you're hitting the wall, but you've got to carry on. You've got to contain, keep the motion, keep your eyes on the person. Sometimes the path's not straight, it's rocky, it's all over the place. And you have to adjust for the environment that you find yourselves in. And life is like a marathon. That's what Paul talks about, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So,
right,
but instead of somebody playing me, the actor that I like at the moment, I'd have to say, is Tom Hardy.
Yeah, right.
He's got that edginess to him, in that sense. He's not the kind of actor that you can say, oh, that's Tom Hardy acting there. He can play many different roles.
Yeah, he's very versatile,
and I like that versatility,
Yeah, I can see that, I can see that.
And I think you would need that with my life,
Yeah, that's a good answer. If you couldn't have thought of someone, I was going to suggest maybe a young Mel Gibson, but
okay.
Or maybe, well, he's a bit crazy, maybe young Mel Gibson, wouldn't he?
Well, no, there were times in my life that people may have said I was crazy.
It could have been. Not now, though. No.
Hopefully not.
Okay. So, following on this theme, if your journey into ministry was a road trip, what's the one landmark that symbolizes a turning point for you?
If my life was
if your journey into ministry
Yep.
was a road trip, what's the one landmark which would symbolize a turning point?
Yeah. It would have to be friends. A lot of my young life was looking for friendship and not finding it in the right places. And the road mark would definitely be finding that friendship in Christ. Because I looked for the friendship in the world. I looked for the friendship in the church. But it wasn't really the substantial friendship that I really needed. The true friendship that I needed was that relationship with Jesus Christ. That he never let me down. He never forsake me. He was always there. And to be honest, sometimes I think we ask too much of human beings. We expect them to be like God, when truth is only God is like God. Only Jesus is the friend above all friends. And I can remember in a very harrowing situation, him audibly, hearing him say to me, "Andrew, I will be your friend." And as soon as I heard those words, it was like a setting your face like flint. You know, when Jesus sets his mind to go to the cross, he knew what he was dying for. You know, when I heard those words, I knew what I was living for. I mean, I remember very many conversations that you would have backwards and forwards with God in prayer. And one of the things he said to me, he said, Andrew, you are not afraid to die, but you are afraid to live. And I just want you to live a mundane, boring life. And I didn't want to live a mundane, boring life. I wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. You know, I was a thrill seeker in that sense, you know, looking for the next. And some might say that might be ADHD or whatever that's in me that has that, you know, drive that keeps going, that keeps going, that keeps going. But, you know, to live life in the ordinary is far more of a challenge, I think, in this day and age. Everybody wants to be the president. Everybody wants to be the footballer or the celebrity or the next big Elon Musk.
Yeah.
But does everybody just want to be yourself?
Yeah.
No, everybody's pretending to be somebody else.
It's true.
You know?
It's true. Yeah, the culture we're in right now is very focused on fame and, you know, importance, or even, I think, worshipping people like Elon Musk and, you know, definitely we see with American politics, but also with, you know, these American businessmen and celebrities as well. And it's like, you've almost got to, whatever that celebrity is saying, you've got to go with that side, with their side. You know, you've got to go with that. And there's also, they're aware of it, and there's a lot of attempts to try and influence as well, isn't there? Yeah.
What's wrong with being bored? What is wrong with being bored? You know, sometimes it's nice to be bored. You know, to have that privilege of being bored. I mean, there are many nations out there where people are living where they don't have that opportunity to be bored. I mean, I remember when lockdown happened in this country, and just to have a normal conversation with your church members, we took it for granted. And it was taken away from us. We couldn't go out and meet with people. Just to have a conversation face to face, that was exciting again, you know? But now we want to go back to our phones. We want to go back to our social media.
True,
We've had enough. We want to hibernate, you know? Let's get back into just being normal. You know, well, what is normal?
What is normal in a post-pandemic world?
You could have a whole debate on that, you know?
Yes, perhaps we could. Future episode. Moving on these questions. So which historical figure would you most relate to, and how has their story influenced your path?
So there is a theologian called Karl Barth, and he comes from around the Second World War. He was a liberal theologian who converted to evangelical thinking. And the reason why he did so was, in the liberal frame of mind where he was coming from, he found that they couldn't define what evil was. It was too loosey-goosey, if you know what I mean, in that sense. Everything was grey. And yet, in the face of the Second World War and the Nazi Germany that he was finding himself in, he didn't think the liberal left had those answers. He became more evangelical. He saw that the Bible spoke to him in a way that liberal theology did not. And what I like about Karl Barth is his theology or his study of God was a dialogue. He explored it from many different ways. He refused to be pigeonholed on this is who God is. He explored the vastness of God, you know, in the sense of his mercy and in the sense of his justice. And quite a lot of his theology was on revelation. How is God revealed to us? And the big dialogue also with God as being something other, as well as God being up close. So I like his way of exploring life, you know, having that conversation. Don't be pigeonholed. Think out loud, you know, and think. That's the main thing, isn't it? A lot of people nowadays, they're just parroting somebody else's ideas, somebody else's thoughts.
Yeah.
They don't even know whether that person even thinks that. It's just they've heard that from somebody,
Yes,
and they've trusted what that person's saying is true.
That's right, yeah.
Rather than actually researching it for themselves, thinking for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. Yeah, again, just kind of like what we were saying about the sort of taking your views from celebrities and things like that, you know, and I think there's a lot of people who are not thinking, you know, they're sort of just looking for a signal. What is the crowd saying? What are the people saying right now? And I think we've always done that. We've always followed trends, and we've always followed, you know, kind of what the culture is saying.
Yeah. Don't you think it's ironic? You started off by saying people think about what the celebrities are saying.
Yes, yeah.
But most of these celebrities are paid to pretend to be somebody else.
Yeah.
And they're very good at playing a part. You know, Jesus talked about hypocrites. That's where that word comes from. It talks about actors playing a part, playing a certain role. And a lot of what we see on TV, a lot of what we see on social media is people playing parts. They're acting. They don't want to reveal who they really are. They want to put across a persona that could be trademarked, or that can make money, or that can get likes, all these type of things. And that's what I find so refreshing about Jesus. Jesus was not an actor. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. He lived his life out loud, you know, with nothing to hide.
I really like that phrase as well. I think he meant what he said and said what he meant, you know, and I think that's something to live by as well, because a lot of people don't do that at the moment, you know, and I really like that phrase. I really like that's something I'd want to emulate in my own life, you know, to be who I am, and for people to see, you know, what you see is what you get, you know, that sort of thing. I think that's, and that's hard, because we do want to put up a front, and we do want to put up faces, and sort of, we want people to like us, you know, and obviously some cases there are aspects of our personality which are not likable. I know there's aspects of my personality definitely that sometimes aren't likable, but you know, I think there should be a goal for us to live authentically as much as possible. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you ever go out nowadays and you buy a wooden piece of furniture. More often than not, like this table here, it's veneer. It's not true wood.
No, yeah.
But when you've got the real thing, there's something heavy about it, something weighty about it. It's more robust. It's more stable. It's more solid. It's going to last the test of time. I often find with IKEA furniture, you move a bookcase, it falls apart.
Yeah.
It breaks. You know, when you build it, you have to leave it in situ. It's really hard to keep IKEA furniture integral when you move to another place.
Yeah.
But if you actually take proper wood, hardwood, it could last for decades.
I think there's even something in us, and not even explainable, but there's something in us that we want that authenticity as well. I mean, if you go around somebody's house and you look at their table, and it's just, you know, admire the table, and they say, oh yeah, that's solid oak, that's, you know, there's something about it that just feels richer. It might not be richer, it might be cheaper, you know, but there's something about it that feels richer, feels more authentic. Yeah. And we crave that, you know, and but in people, we sort of seem to do the opposite. But it's very interesting. But just going back to that point, I was thinking, you know, with that kind of that fakeness, I suppose, of the celebrity, the acting and stuff. You know, it's the same thing we find where sometimes these celebrities are invited onto political campaigns, and they give these speeches, you know, that, oh yeah, we'll support this policy and this is what we want and everything. And then you find out, oh, they were all paid to do it.
It's a job.
It's a job.
You know, and I think, what is your job to present a certain picture? Yeah. You know, and that to me is, if somebody's being paid to say something and they won't say it without being paid, then why would I trust
it's not authentic, is it? It's not authentic.
It can't be authentic. You know, if I have to have a certain thing and be paid for it, then why listen to me? The only human being that I really want to listen to is Jesus Christ. because he was willing to die for what he believed. He was more than able to speak the truth. He backed up his words with actions. And he didn't need to be a celebrity. Often he ran away from the crowds. Often he didn't want the limelight or the attention. He talks about the kingdom of God being hidden, and how it is revealed in who he is, but most people wanting the publicity or the popular motion,
Yeah. Well, that's that is a good point, because that will pick up that, I think, when we start to talk about your passion. But the next one would be, what's the most unexpected place you found inspiration for a sermon?
That is a good question. Most unexpected place for a sermon. I could tell you what the most unexpected place that I've ever preached in,
Sure, yeah.
I think for me, when I was younger, I was a Jack the Lad kind of thing. I remember very much, I used to go out with my friends, and at the end of the night we would be having conversations like we're having conversations now. And before I know it, people would start to ask you questions about certain things to do with God, life, all these things. And these guys that I was hanging around with were unchurched. They weren't godly. We weren't in good places. But you would be teaching them things out of the Bible in a car, or not, if not in a car, in a nightclub, or on the street. And that would be, I say, the most unexpected places that you would expect to have a sermon, because you were, even in my own life, I wasn't going on with God in the way that I should have been going on with God. But I was finding that even when I was with people who were the most ungodliest of people, I would be teaching them about things in the Bible, or who God is and what God has done. And at the same time, there would be the shame in my own heart, thinking, I'm not in that place myself, but this is what I believe. So in terms of the most unexpected place to have a sermon, I would say those places, the workplace, where somebody asks you. I mean, I used to like going into work, and the book, The Purpose-Driven Life.
Yeah.
I'd have a copy of Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life,
I've read that as well.
and I would leave it on my desk because I saw it as an evangelistic tool.
Yeah.
Inevitably, somebody would come along. I was working in a solicitor's office.
Yeah.
Say, "What's this?" I said, "Oh, you can have it." And I know 2 people who gave their lives to the Lord just
great.
because I gave them that book. But then it gave me an opportunity to speak into their lives about some of the subject matter that they were reading in this book.
Yeah.
It gave me a platform to speak. And so they're the kind of places, or even the hairdressers, when you're going to get your hair cut, and people start to ask you questions. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a pastor at the local church. Oh, that's interesting.
Actually, that probably leads us on to the next question, because I was going to ask, what's a book you read early in life that had a profound impact on you?
I would have to say the Bible first.
Well,
but if you want something
easy,
wider,
that's an easy one to get out.
But going wider than the Bible, the book that, there's 2 books, but mainly the main book I would say would be Tolkien.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings series. I remember reading the trilogy Lord of the Rings in 7 days when I was about 12 years of age. And it was in a half-term holiday or something like that. I could not put it back. I literally spent most of the time in my bed, day and night, reading this book. And the reason why I say it was quite profound, I mean, just even if you look at the titles of that book, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
So that idea of fellowship between human beings. I didn't like The Hobbit so much, and particularly the film adaptations of The Hobbit, because The Hobbit was all about camaraderie between brothers, and then they introduced this love interest in the Jackson movies, And it wasn't about the love between a man and a woman. It was about philo, the love between friends, that you would lay down your life in war for these friendships. So that idea of the Hobbit and the fellowship on a perilous journey, a band of brothers banding together to fight evil against impossible odds. On a pilgrimage, and then you go even further into the two towers, that sense of two systems or two towers in that sense. It's a bit confusing in that story, the story of the two towers, I think, because I think as I've grown older, I've come to realize it's Orthanc or Isengard and Barad-dûr, in Mordor. But when I was looking at it, I was looking at the good tower of Minas Tirith or
Right.
Helm's Deep,
That's
and
interesting.
then Isengard. So Helm's Deep and Isengard, in that sense, the good and the evil.
Yes, right.
The two
But
world
it's-
systems. That's what helped me have a realization of that. And then the third one, which is the most powerful title, is the Return of the King. Because there's a lot of analogy in that. Jesus will return, and he goes back to his city on earth. So Minas Tirith is symbolic of Jerusalem, but Jerusalem does not accept the king because there's a steward in charge at the time who's made himself king.
Yes.
And it's not until the great battle is fought at the end of all times, the steward's gone away, that the king is then ushered in to the city of Minas Tirith. And that, to me, there's so much reflection and symbolism with the Bible, I know Tolkien says that it's not there, in that sense, but it is, in very many ways.
Influenced in a way, or he couldn't sort of, couldn't get away from that influence, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, one of the most powerful movies that there's two movies I can think of. You got Schindler's List, haven't you? And then you've also got Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, yeah.
They don't seem to have love interest.
That sort of
per
Hollywood.
se.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're phenomenal movies.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not saying that people are fed up about romantic love, but I am saying that to have a variety of relationships that you see, that are not sexual.
Yes, yeah.
I think, we live in a society that's highly sexualized.
Just, yeah, obsessed with it. Yeah.
It is obsessed with it. And you think, well, can't we just show love in another light where it doesn't have to be sexual? I mean, I know even if you look at the stories in the Old Testament with David and Jonathan, for example, a lot of people revisit that and they start to intimate that there was a sexual tension between David and Jonathan. And you could just turn around and say, well, actually, they were just good friends.
Yeah.
They were best friends.
Yeah.
And we need to rediscover what that really means to be a best friend. I mean, I know they talk about bromances now, don't they?
Yeah, bro. Yeah. But yeah, it's true though. That I think you see that, don't you? There's a lot of in the media. There is a lot of, like, if you watch these TV shows and there's two characters that sort of really click and get along with each other, everybody just jumps into, they're going to get together. It's like, why do they have to get together? Why can't they just be friends? That are just looking out for each other and just sharing life together. Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll just the next question, which is probably goes back to one of your answers earlier. But what would be a memorable misadventure from your youth that, in hindsight, taught you an invaluable lesson?
Yeah, there's many. Which ones are PG? No, the one that I would say was quite relatively tame. Because I don't want to give glory to the darkness and stuff like that. But one of the ones which was relatively tame is I went on a bike ride with a youth group that I belonged to in Loughton in Essex. And I was about 12 years of age at the time. And I had just got myself a brand new racer bike. And I was one of the older youth in the church at the time. And I was very competitive when it came to physical competitions. I'm not so much I'm nowhere near that way now. You know, I was very sporty, very athletic in that way. We'd gone on a cycle ride, and I was always waiting for everybody to catch up. And I got so bored of waiting for people to catch up, because I just wanted to use my new bike. I just wanted to get to where I was going a lot quicker. I was quite one of those people who never really enjoyed the journey. I just wanted to get to A to B as quick as possible. And so I thought, you know what, I know the way back. We're in the middle of Epping Forest. And I cycled off ahead. And I went so fast that the youth leaders couldn't keep up with me. They didn't even, well, I don't even know whether they knew that I was gone.
Yeah.
And then I realized I was lost in the middle of Epping Forest on the road, and I was 12 years of age. And it was in the days that you didn't have mobile phones to contact people.
Yeah.
So I went to a garage and asked whether I could use their phone. They wouldn't let me. So I then cycled on a bit further, and I found a phone box. I mean, some people don't even know what phone boxes are in those days. It used to be a place where you could actually ring in locations, you know. And so I then managed to reverse the charges, because I've been taught how to reverse the charges in case of an emergency, because I had no money on me whatsoever. And as a result of reversing charge and phoning, I managed to get in contact with my parents, and they picked me up. The moral of the story was simply this. First of all, patience is important. Secondly, is overestimating your ability. And thirdly, you can always get lost, even if you think you know the way. And being humble enough to admit when you're lost. And try and find help from other sources. And even when people refuse to help you, keep asking for help. Yeah. Because that's important too, isn't it? You know, so many people in life, they go through problems and instances where they're in trouble. They ask for help. Yeah. They get turned down by one source. They just give up. Yeah. But if you're persistent in asking and seeking, knock, and you will find, as Jesus says, keep knocking, like the righteous judge, unrighteous judge.
I'm just thinking of the youth leaders as well. You know, they've got this one kid who's gone off, and now they've got to panic because they've got to try and find one they're responsible. So he probably caused it.
Well, they thought I'd gone home. They thought I'd made it home.
He's gone home.
And then so when they faced my mother, I felt sorry for them. You know, but at the same time, you know, it wasn't their fault. It was my fault. You know, and I was, you know, I was quite a headstrong young person. Yeah. I'm by nature, there's an impulsiveness in me.
If we discovered intelligent life on another planet, and you were called on to give the first church service, what would be your sermon?
On another planet, intelligent life.
On another planet.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's interesting, isn't it, the whole idea of life, isn't it? You know, God could have just created human beings on this planet, but he didn't. He created animals. And he gave the responsibility for human beings to look after those animals, to steward those animals. And so I think the first and foremost thing I'd like to preach on would be peace and bearing with one another. You know, because we are all different, you know, and who's to say, you know, that if we explore this universe that God has created, you know, wider than just this earth, wider than just this universe, you know, sooner or later we could find that there are other life forces out there, other planets, other places, but we are all created beings. And my belief would be that, you know, that's a beautiful sermon, isn't it? Because the nature of the fact that somebody is created by God here means that they will still be created by God there. And that the sacrifice of Jesus and the life of Jesus will still be relevant, not just on earth, to the ends of the earth, you know, That idea that thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. You know, that nature of the universe that's out there.
Yeah.
You know, all that type of thing.
So
peace will be
you'd
it.
see yourself as a bit of a peace ambassador.
Well, there
then,
needs
really.
to be peace, doesn't there?
There needs to be, yeah.
You know, because we look at our world here, you know, without involving other life that could be out there. We need the peace here on earth. Because people are just not united. You know, we live in a country which is called the United Kingdom, or a group of countries which is called the United Kingdom. You couldn't get more disunited at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What's a question you've always wanted someone to ask you in an interview, but never have?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I've never really thought about that, Wes. I mean, maybe. I mean, and I've said this before, perhaps in the past. You know, what would be your passing legacy that you'd like to give on to the next generation? I love that idea of a question is what do you give to the next generation? Because that ultimately is our legacy.
So I could ask you that then. What would be your lasting?
I mean, it's fundamental for me, that question. I mean, if you look in the Bible, there's a king called Hezekiah. And Hezekiah shows the Babylonians everything in his kingdom, and then he's warned by the prophet that because he's done this, everything in his kingdom will go. But this won't happen in his lifetime. And the sorry words that he says afterwards is, at least I'll have peace in my lifetime. To me, I want to see peace in my children's lifetime. I want to see wisdom in my children's lifetime. I want to see them going on with God. All four of them, you know. Hannah and I, we pray for our children all the time. And some of them are still trying to find themselves. That some of them are not in the best of places. You know, they're good children. But my children aren't the only children. You know, as a father, as Gen X, I don't want to compete with Gen Z. I don't want to be more superior than the boomer generation. I don't want to be more superior than the millennials. I want to see a generation that seeks to benefit every generation. Why are we competing with one another? We're one big family. You know, the idea that we have a common ancestor. You know, we should be caring for each other, building each other up. There's so much politics that is separating people.
There's
nowadays.
there's a big there's a really big deal about, you know, you see it all the time in social media, is like, you know, it's Gen X versus, or Gen Z versus the boomers, you know, and that kind of thing. And yet, you know, it can be quite, sometimes it can be quite, you know, it can get quite sort of nasty, really. It can get very political. And, you know, there's an idea, actually, I think, with the boomers, that they sort of benefited from the boom that came after the war, the Second World War. And in fact, it probably, that was 70 or odd years ago now. It's perhaps not as relevant now, or not, you know, there's new paradigms, but there's this idea that they benefited, and in fact, I think in society there is sort of a bit of evidence of this. You know, they did benefit from a boom. Price, you know, they got housing, prices were cheap and everything, and then what's happened since then is there's been, you know, a lot of the young people these days, there's a lot of concern over being able to get a house, and being able to get jobs, even, you know, some struggle for that. And but there's sort of this kind of, quite often I find people are just stoking the divide between those generations. And for me, it's like, okay, so you're yes, you might be part of a generation that benefited, but it's not as though you were you were plotting to sort of, oh wow, I'm going to have a great life, and then I'm going to turn over, make my kids, fail, and ha ha ha, I'm going to get rich, and and these guys are going to suffer. Who cares? It's not like that at all, is it? I mean, that generation that came up, they benefited from certain economic conditions, but it wasn't like, I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, no, actually, I'm going to live a poor life, or, no, you're going to, it's like, that's the price of a house. I'm going to get a mortgage and get a house, You're not thinking like, oh, if I buy this house now, 50 years from now, my grandchildren are going to be poor, dirt poor, and can't afford a house. It's not like that. But it seems to be a lot of this division. Shall we? So at this point, shall we could take a break.
Okay.
And then we'll look at part 2, and we'll talk about your passion as a topic that you're very interested in, and there's a lot to say on that as well.
We hope you've enjoyed watching or listening to this episode. If you have any thoughts about the topics from this episode, feel free to leave a comment or reach out to the team. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you're joining us from so you won't miss the next episode. We appreciate you listening in and look forward to bringing you more content through Life Explored. Bye for now.